Guess I was told.
Ya might, it's Vamsy from Player's Narrative Eye. Red Dead Redemption 2 has been criticised for being too restrictive and outdated in its game design by most critics or YouTubers. Looking at its simplistic shooting mechanics and trotting talking missions, I can see where they're coming from. Red Dead is primarily an action-adventure game that lets you be a cowboy in the waning days of the Wild West. In my opinion, it strikes a perfect balance between the story that the developers are trying to tell and the ones that the players create themselves with the systems and the open world. There's games that focus on excellent open world emergent gameplay like Metal Gear Solid and Breath of the Wild, and there's other games that are tightly paced with a controlled narrative like The Last of Us. Failing to perform a particular action might lead to a fail, but it comes at the cost of telling a rich narrative and writing. It accommodates both player narrative, cheeky brand plug in there, and story to coexist by not undermining each other. I mean, we play games to be immersed and entertained after all. The element that really stood out for me are the side quests like home robberies, favors, and treasure hunts. These take advantage of the player's knowledge of the open world and use it to tell an emergent yet authored quest that are either discovered or stumbled upon by the player that immerse and reward the player either with chests or world building, and sometimes just fun story bits. Like, take this home robbery. I stumbled upon there and you hear this argument between a father and his son, and you overhear that he's being abusive, and once you go in, he starts to attack you. You kill the father and you hear his son's cries in the other room. It's at this moment that I felt guilt, so I just took the stash and let the son live. But I felt terrible for making him an orphan.
Please don't kill me!
This random encounter that I chose to go in and explore rewarded me with smart writing and anecdotal story bits that are part of the massive world that you explore. It encourages you to explore for both world building and quests that are player driven, as you can choose to kill or leave them or have a conversation or just ignore them altogether. Which in a game that's known for its narrative adds flavour and makes the world more believable as they're filled with characters that react to the player. I was wondering about I came across this prisoner who wanted me to free him from his shackles, and so I did. In turn, he provided me with a home robbery tip with a location, but there's no icon or indicators telling you where to go. As I explored the world and aha! Aberdeen Pig Farm showed up, and so I went in looking for the farm, where this family greets you with a creepy yet warm southern way. So I went in with the hope of robbing them, and their hospitality and weirdness made me want to leave. But I chose to go back, and the game reacts to it as well. They rob you and leave you to die. I end up going back and killing them to get revenge and my money back. This is a good example of letting the player explore and discover things and yet tell a rich story with a specific tone. Story and player choice can coexist in the same world. Metal Gear Solid 5 has the mantra of gameplay is king, but tells a lackluster story or anecdotal bits. Games rich in storytelling are mostly linear like The Last of Us or Uncharted, and lack player choice or rarely give the player a sense of discovery, which is a potent feeling that's mostly seen in open world games. It also nudges you to explore with other quests, like when you first go to Valentine, the keen eyed player will spot this dead body and will follow the blood trail. You'd find a head with a map. A killer has been murdering people and showcasing his work like art. And so as you explore the world and find the second and third maps, you piece together a map that hints you to the location of the killer. The map describes you a disheveled cabin and a landmark nearby. This makes the player figure out the landmark on their own. And when you discover his basement, you learn more about the killer and how he wants to be feared and respected from his letters. I, being the good Samaritan, took him to the sheriff because killing people frivolously would be the same as a serial killer. Even something simple as letting the player think there's hostiles but giving them branching paths to either have a chat or cook some moonshine with them and reward them for doing so. It also gets around the nagging trope of wide open worlds with empty buildings or buildings that you can't enter that we see in most open world games. It does so by having a cohesive world that lends itself to explore as it's packed with animals to hunt and NPCs to encounter. Another way it immerses the player is by changing the world itself. Characters go about their routines and the world reacts to actions that you might have caused, like leaving dead animals or bodies behind that'll be eaten by vultures and other hunters. Also, buildings and constructions come to fruition over time. As discussed before, side missions have characters that encourage or test the ability of your knowledge of the world. Navigating the world by yourself is a challenge in itself, which most developers ignore or just default you with a waypoint or a floating marker telling you where to go. Missions like home robberies and treasure maps immerse the player to look the world closer and the details in it that provide a story themselves, and not hackneyed or trite like bandit cabs in Assassin's Creed. Side quests add to the main story, like how Arthur can choose to forgive people's debts as his morality changes through the narrative. He also tries to make amends to people he's wronged earlier in the game. This not only adds depth to Arthur, but also gives the player a chance to learn and influence Arthur's morality. The noblest of men and women side quests has you document the famous gunslingers that are going extinct, which is a running theme in both Red Dead games. Arthur, who's an outlaw with a gang, also feels the same way, like living an outcast way of life and not belonging to the society, hence finding their purpose. These quests only enhance the themes and the stories of the world they inhabit. Even something simple as building a bond with the host you own and spending time with them gives you a familiar sense of living world. And if they die, they stay dead, just like in real life. Any NPC can be interacted with, agreed or antagonized, that string together dialogues from a pool of sentences that make sense or are just funny moments. The expansive hunting, fishing and crafting all add to a sense of world that's been lived in and will continue to exist even when you turn off your PS4. And that's the sign of a good, immersive open world. What elements of the game immersed you the most? Let me know in the comment section below. Is it the shrinking horse balls or Dutch saying, "I have a plan"? Subscribe to support my channel and like the video to help me get recognized by YouTube. Chur.
That's great fun. Lenny, where are you?